Hello and thanks for joining us again on Ideas Exchange. Tonight our conversation is on Parliament. We want to look at reflections on recent development. A hung Parliament, and of course because of interest by many Ghanaians who are looking at how Parliament will unfold between now and the end of December 2024, by which time we would have gone into another major election. We are looking at a rejuvenated minority, their resolve, public expectations, and the task ahead. In fact, the scenario today is almost as we saw in January 2021. Remember, before January 2021, NPP had the majority in Parliament. If my records are right, they had about 169 members, and NDC had 106. So after the December 7 elections in 2020, NPP lost as many as 32 seats. And so as we speak, NPP had at the time 137 and NDC had 137. So many Ghanaians were looking up to a parliament with a deputy speaker of parliament who came from the NPP side and had declared his intention to support the NPP on the floor of parliament. And then on the other hand, we had a speaker of parliament who was from the NDC side, but who says or claims he's thinking about Ghana and therefore he wants to play neutral. Fast forward, you would recall that prior to those events that unfolded before we went to Ascent North, there was this perception of government trying to twist the arms of Parliament by using the courts. And many people concluded that it is because government had come out of the 2020 elections bruised. Don't forget, there were some interesting developments in our courts. For example, issues about birth certificates and how that could not be used to register as a Ghanaian. And of course, there were issues about NIA and registrations where borders were closed, and issues about whether somebody is qualified to be a Ghanaian and can register and so on and so forth. So NPP went into the 2020 elections very confident of winning hands down. But what unfolded after the result was a shocker. And that led to the series of court action. And as we speak, fast forward, the issues about Jechikwesin, which will dominate our conversations tonight. Today is July 5th, 2023. 2 years ago, July 28, 2021, the then minority leader of parliament had the cause to address the parliamentary press corps. And his concern was about what he suspected in this message. Just hear it before I introduce my guest.
We are addressing you on some developments from the Cape Coast High Court, which seeks to suggest a possible by-election in the Ascent North constituency and the potential of our colleague, the Honorable Kwesin Gachi, being denied his legitimate role as an elected representative of the Ascent North constituency, which election he won outright as a citizen born and bred in that community, but for some time had to sojourn in Canada. He subsequently, as I understand, renounced his citizenship, expressed so far back 2019, got his certificate at least before the elections. Before the elections. His renunciation certificate was before the elections. We in the minority remain unshaken. We are confident that it is our seat, it will remain our seat. Our first is to use the same legal processes and legal forum and opportunities available within the Constitution. We will contest the ruling. The judge erred both in law and in fact. Is a travesty of justice. But what is worrying, we don't want to believe that the courts of Ghana have been captured, and that the courts of Ghana have become forums being used surreptitiously to tilt the balance of power. We are equal, 137, 137. What is happening is the courts now being used to tilt the balance of power and to weaken time-tested historical notion of checks and balances. Justice must not only be done, but must manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done. What happened this morning in Cape Coast, we are told that even when the Supreme Court of Ghana directed the Honorable Kwesi and his legal team to go and file appropriate legal motions for the matter to be referred to the Supreme Court, he was denied that. That is repugnant and an affront to his right to a fair trial guaranteed under Article 19 of the 1992 Constitution. Danger begets our democracy with the developments happening. But as I've assured you, we remain unshaken, we remain very resolved, and cooperation will suffer.
Welcome back. In fact, as we speak, many people have been witnessing proceedings in Parliament. Yesterday, we saw the swearing in of Jechi Kwesi. So the NDC is very rejuvenated, very confident that a hanged Parliament, which is telling or retelling the story that we all saw in 2021, is unfolding again. My guest is Emmanuel Ama Kofi Boa. He is a former energy minister, the MP for Elembele. In fact, he is the only man who beat then Elembele Mugabe, and that was as far back as December 7, 2008. And since then, he has been the MP for Elembele and has risen through the ranks. And as we speak, is the deputy minority leader. Kofi, it's been a while. I call you Kofi, though you are a leader of Parliament.
It's good to be here, and you've been around. Because
yes, I've been around.
I remember my very early years. And you were a Joy FM guy.
Yes. And I remember the issues around your appointment to become energy minister. And then the Nzuma chiefs were wild and had to grant that interview, which eventually caught the attention of the president.
It is true. It is true.
And here we are as a former energy minister.
That's right.
Of course, you did very well in the sector.
Yes.
At least you are on record to have made a pledge through the president then that he was going to fix Dumso. And it was fixed. And you are proud about it.
And let the people of Ghana know that President Mahama indeed fixed Dumso.
Now, if you look at your journey, somebody who beat a so-called Elembele Mugabe, Freddie Blee, who was very popular then, and then looking at the works of Parliament, and then your work in the constituency, and today your appreciation by the party and your appointment as deputy minority leader, how has it been?
Well, it's been good. I think it says a lot about the NDC and the political party called NDC. It's a party that basically welcomes everybody. It's a party that basically believes in results and believes that if people play by the rules and work hard, they will always be recognized. And I encourage every young person that this is the party of the youth. This is the party of the future. And I'm very, very proud to be part of the NDC. But I can't wait to go to Parliament and talk about what your introduction.
Yes, and Parliament today, as we speak,
yes.
the minority, to be specific, is rejuvenated, because prior to the Asan North by-election, you were shut down by one. And many people are looking at the Parliament, as we speak, very critical because of some interesting bills that may pass through. The EC is sitting on the fence. The LGBTQ plus bill is also hanging. The mid-year budget review would also pass through. Now, let's first of all look at the events that led to the re-election of Jechi Kwesi. How difficult was it?
I think that your recollection was very right. I mean, after the 2020 election, we basically changed the landscape of Ghana, moving from 106 and basically drawing. In fact, we won the majority. As you know, we still have about 4 seats, with the controversial 4 seats that we still believe that we had won, but the MPP through all sorts of machinations, managed to switch them on their side. But granted, that's what the number we are dealing with. You remember the very first day we came to Parliament, the attempt to make sure that Jachikwesin was taken out of Parliament. There was a court order that basically we stood our ground and realized that it was really, I would say, fake, because it didn't go through the right procedure. And that was the beginning of the Jachikwesin's troubles, because they wanted to be sure that he was out so that they could get the number to elect the speaker. It didn't happen. And from that day on, they never forgave him, because he became part of the dedicated minority group that basically changed the history of Ghana by electing a speaker from the minority side. Jachikwesin has gone through so much. We know so, because he basically has since then been going to court, being tossed, whether it's a high court in Cape Coast. I don't know how many times he had to go there. But I think in all he had dedicated lawyers, and I have to take the opportunity to thank the lawyers, especially Mr. Chachu Chikate, for his selfless dedication to this cause.
Now, your preamble is a good reflection, especially because many people forget that when the members of parliament were supposed to be sworn in, there were issues about whether the Jachikwesin's presence was even contempt of court.
That's correct.
And so many people have forgotten that.
They've forgotten that.
And
I think it's very, very important. And you need to take that backward. And I have the strong view that it is that point on that they decided that he's a target. The MPP, and if you see, I'll bring you back to this by-election.
Right.
But they had a mindset from day one that Jachikwesin couldn't have taken their seat. They thought that is their seat. You see, the arrogance in which MPP controls such strongholds, they do not really have to meet the demands of the people who elect them. But somehow, they believe that those people must be beholden to them forever, because those are strongholds of theirs. I think that it is very, very clear that that is really their mindset from that time on. And so they pursued Jachikwesin relentlessly through the courts, and when it became clear that Jachikwesin was determined, and I must say that he was a courageous man, they went through all sorts of things. And I'm not going to go through the history because you know it. But just think about how, after those attempts, they tried to move it out of Parliament, and ultimately, if got the Supreme Court ultimately to basically remove him by force.
That's very interesting.
And it's very, very interesting. And history will be written again. Yesterday, when Jachikwesin won the election, the by-election, and I'm bringing you back. Remember, in all those periods, Jachikwesin was not a member of Parliament. It was only yesterday morning when the speaker called him, when he raised his hand and swore the oath, according to our standing orders 14:1, that after he had sworn the oath of office, the oath of allegiance, that's when he became a member of Parliament. All of a sudden, we turned our laws upside down and said, Jachikwesin from day one, even when he submitted his FOB, had to be prove that he had a certificate of citizenship and all of that. I mean, those arguments, quite frankly, and I have the right to my views, I will disagree with the courts to the day I die. But let's put that aside. It is very clear that the MPP was determined, after we had really won 137 seats, and they asked the question, exactly what can we do to weaken the NDC minority? What do we do to reduce their number? And remember some of the things we've done, even in the face of a lot of these challenges. And I remind you, just in the last Parliament, the last day before we came, the budget approval here, this MPP government, through the Ministry of Tourism, has smuggling in about 400 million for us to approve a cathedral. It was the NDC minority who stood up and made sure That was out of that budget.
The budget. I remember very well.
So you see, this NDC minority has stood up to this government. This government has always noted that if we do not find a way to weaken, remember how our minority leader, Honorable Atufoso, ended up in court. It was because between the e-levy period, he was the one leading the charge for e-levy. All of a sudden, what can we find on this man? And the story goes on. But you know, let me bring you back to this victory. Let me start by saying that I think that now first we have to thank the good people of our Senate for their dedication and courage. Let me thank the candidate for his stance, for his strength, and for his belief in his people. Because a lot of things has happened that I can't disclose on your platform. Anybody at all who have given up and said, you know, enough. But Honorable Jechi Kwesin basically chose service of his people over everything else. And I want to thank the NDC, starting from President Mahama and our Chairman General Suidin Katia, and General Secretary, and all the executives. But then I bring back my gallant members of Parliament who were so dedicated.
Which is what I am heading to. How difficult was it? Because I saw pictures of you walking in rains, in the bushes,
I think that
and so on and so forth.
I have to give credit to the leader of the minority. I mean, from day one, he made a very profound statement when we met. He said, this election must be led by us.
Members of Parliament.
Parliament must drive this election. And in many ways, we had tremendous support from the party, the dedication. But I have to tell you, I take my heart out for members of Parliament for their dedication. Almost every. And if we wanted a period of show of unity and love, this was it. Everybody was asking not playing his role, and in many cases doing whatever it takes for us to win this by-election. But more than that, when we went to Ahianyo, it was very clear to us that the MPP will not play by the rules. Mm-hmm. First, they had brought a candidate who had no record in Ahianyo, a candidate who lived in Takwa. And I won't even go through his background. But a candidate whose record in Takwa was terrible because of the type of business he did. He was in the Galamsey business. Well, it didn't matter to them in any event, so they brought him. They brought this candidate because he had to come from where Jechi Kwesin came from.
To neutralize the vote.
Neutralize the vote. And so at that point, every process in terms of their internal process had to work. Do you know that the member of Parliament who lost earlier, the candidate that was really the front runner, was basically pushed aside? That's one. So remember that when that happened, it became a problem. The problem is that the candidate they brought had no name recognition. He had no connection with the electorate. And so they concluded that, oh, well, it doesn't matter. We can buy the minds of the electorate. And so basically it was an imposition. The NDC had a message, they did not. And I can never forget a profound statement that was made by a chief when I visited one community. He said, Honorable, I've listened to you, but don't worry. We, the people of Ahianyo, on Tuesday, this was on a Friday, on Tuesday, we will go to the People's Court, mm-hmm, and we will make our judgment. And on that day, the people of Ghana will know that the real court of the people have made a decision, and Jechi Kwesin is basically free
to represent them.
To represent them. And that message, once we give it out, anybody who seriously understands the source of our power as politicians will know that must end the matter.
Well, my guest is the Deputy Minority Leader, Emmanuel Ama Kofi-Boah. Our topic is Hang Parliament, Rejuvenated Minority, and the Task Ahead. Now, we are looking at one key factor that has generated this public interest. Jechi Kwesin is the MP for Asen North.
That's correct.
Now, yesterday, something funny was unfolding in Parliament.
Yes.
Initially, it was advertised that the swearing-in was going to start at 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, the chamber was quite empty. The minority arrived, and it took some time before the majority members came.
Yes.
We are hearing rumors that some of them even eventually left at the time he was being sworn in. Was that this signal to you as colleagues in Parliament?
I think they were basically bruised, and they were not very sure what to take of this victory. The NDC was here in their numbers, mostly in white, in celebration, and they were basically still not recovered from the very terrible loss. And so it's understandable how they had a whole caucus meeting the whole morning and didn't know whether to participate or not. But ultimately, we got their leader, and few of them came in. But what was shocking, and this is really the point that we must really take note, is that on a morning like yesterday, when the people of our synod had spoken, when basically almost all traditional leaders from our synod had taken a bus, accompanied their son to Parliament in a show of solidarity and support to give clear signal to the government of President Akufo-Addo and Bawumia that enough is enough. We have chosen democracy, and in this dispensation, when we make a decision, don't overturn it. Leave our son alone. No. You saw earlier the Attorney General basically threatening that he is going to continue on this unwarranted, unjustifiable prosecution of a honorable member.
On daily basis.
So guess what? On yesterday morning, when we were going to swear him in, he was to appear in court.
Yesterday morning?
Yes. And I have to say, it took the intervention of the Speaker to ensure that this swearing in took place. And I have to say that we are very proud of the Speaker and all he has been doing to support us, because I can understand the position he is in. He's a very neutral arbiter who believes in fairness, and he does that very well. But there's a lot of things that he does to ensure that the work of Parliament goes on. And when he sees that something is wrong, something is not fair, he stands up.
Now, it is interesting that you have raised this particular point, because yesterday I was in Parliament myself, yes, and I made an observation, because when the majority leader was given the opportunity to offer his congratulatory message from his side to the House, he made some specific commentaries which suggested that there is a certain mindset that you are referred to. Now, I want to quote. For example, he said that his victory is momentary while it lasts, and that the rest of it is in the hands of the Attorney General. Now, on the back of the calls for or the advice or the recommendation to the Attorney General to consider filing nolli prosequi or stopping this case, so if you look at how the majority
if you see this statement
spoke, what does it mean to you?
This statement is not out of complete disrespect of the mandate of the people of our synod. What is it? On a day when the people of our synod has overwhelmingly, I remember the vote he got. He almost doubled his vote. What is that telling the MPP? You know, I think that there's something that I have really noticed about the people of Ghana. They can't stand arrogance. They can't stand that. And I think that this government must have a sober reflection of all the things they've done in the past. And when people, serious Ghanaians who love this country and believe in the cohesion and the unity of this country, speak, they shouldn't just chide their communicators to go on radio and insult.
Now, when you engage,
because it is wrong. I mean, how do you tell a member of parliament who for 2 years has basically been harassed and abused and not allowed to represent his people, basically lost so much opportunity to basically help his people. And for 2 years, let the record be very clear, the Honorable Jechi Kwesin was not getting any allocations as a member of parliament.
To support his own people.
He was doing everything on his own. Can you imagine? He gets the chance, go through this sacrifice, and he's voted massively. He comes back with a fresh mandate, and what this government is telling him is that we don't care what your people have done.
That his fate is in the hands of the Attorney
That
General.
we are going to use the power we have. And let me say something about the Attorney General. He is not simply the Attorney General, he's the Minister of Justice. And the Attorney General has a responsibility to protect the rights and interests of the people of Ghana. And so for the Attorney General earlier to be making prejudicial statements, basically cemented by the President, is something that
Now,
we must
yesterday,
be very sad about.
after the swearing in, I know you had a brief caucus meeting with the MP who has just been sworn in, and I saw pictures of you with him, the former president, with the Speaker of Parliament. What was his mood? How did he receive such a threatening message from Oseche Mensah Bonsu that his victory or the jubilation is momentary and that his fate is in the hands of the Attorney General?
He's not perturbed at all. In fact, I have not seen anybody with the kind of calmness, courageous as Honorable Kwesin.
Could you have withstood that?
Well, it has not happened to me, but I can tell you that it is very amazing that a man at his age,
I'm told he's over 70.
a man at his age, a very handsome man, going through this with the kind of patience and humility. You know, when you talk to Jechi Kwesin, you see his heart. He doesn't even have any hatred for any of the things that has happened to nor the MPP. He's just simply committed to serving his people and making sure that he can basically change their lives.
Do you see colleague members of parliament and bloc, NPP side majority, many of them supporting this orientation among the hot-headed members of the party?
I always say that I'm looking forward to the day that some of the private sentiments expressed by individual members of parliament, they will be bold enough to come out to say it. I mean, you will meet individual members of parliament, even from the other side, who would say, this is so unjustifiable. But who are they to come out?
But why can't they speak their mind publicly?
Why can't they speak their mind? Well, if you want to know the answer, go and ask those who stood up that they wanted the finance minister dismissed. Go and ask them why they are quiet. I think they will tell you. It speaks volumes about the kind of authority that this executive have and how they are able to basically use it to silence members of parliament like that. So, for example, and that explains it. I don't even want to go to, but that is truly the case. I mean, I am sure that we're going to get to the day, but it is very clear to me that this victory for the NDC is a very victory. It doesn't have to really get to our heads, and it won't, because as far as I'm concerned, that was one election. But what it does is that it basically united with a sense of purpose, and also gives us a sense of the determination of the MPP, that they will get at nothing. They will do everything to try to basically stay in power. Do you know that the day of election, they were basically tearing the roads around where I was, in Kushia area? Let's go back there and see whether that is happening.
We understand some of those projects have stopped, but now let's look at the substantive issues going forward. Yesterday, when the minority leader spoke, he was specific that as long as what he described as the persecution of Jachikoisin continues, anytime he appears in court, you join him in solidarity. What does this really mean? Because a lot of people are confused about the posturing.
I think nobody should be confused about it. The point we are making is very clear. We've had enough of the bullying, of the attempt by the MPP to use the power they have to basically weaken the NDC minority. I just told you why the Honorable case Atoforsen is in court. He's in court because he led a charge on E-Levy and basically made sure he stood and did the work that the people of his constituency has elected him to do. Other than that, was Honorable Atoforsen the Minister of Finance? Where in the history of Ghana have you heard a deputy minister who's been given authority to do something is dragged to court when, as deputy minister, and I've been a deputy minister, we act under the instructions
of the substantive minister.
So you have to understand what is going on. You know, just a few weeks ago, there were additional charges trumped on Honorable Collins Dauda, MP for ASUTV. Why?
Fresh charges.
Yes. And then, don't even take my word for it. After this victory of the Jachikoisin, this government now comes out, after the president, his only campaign message he sent to us, saying, not, don't vote for Jachikoisin because we are going to pursue him and send him to prison. When the people of Asinod refused, on the day of his swearing in, they were basically trying to do that. And we are saying to Nana Akufo-Addo and his government that we have had enough, I won't take it. And we are telling them that we have been elected to basically work for the people of Ghana, and the people of Ghana know that we are committed to that. But in any event, if the attempt to basically weaken the minority is going to be done in a way you have done it in the past, dragging on the day, a few days to the election, didn't the Attorney General go to court and argue that on a daily basis, Jachikoisin should be in court?
Now, but if, for example, assuming that all 137 members on the minority side,
yes,
136, decide to virtually boycott proceedings in Parliament because
I don't want you to worry.
No, let me go there because many people who don't really understand the proceedings of Parliament and the numbers you need for certain considerations to be made. How tricky can this be? Because we have some critical bills there.
It will not be tricky.
CIEC maybe has been assured that they would have won. Asin North is sitting on the fence and threatening to bring it back. You are looking at LGBTQ, even though you have an overwhelming support for it on the floor. Can you help us appreciate?
We will. What we have said is our commitment and our word, and we've said that we are going to carefully look at what this government will do. We know harassment when we see it. We know machinations to weaken us. News on this part. We will solidarize with our colleagues. The strategy,
you can't disclose
how we do it, we can't disclose.
Okay, we'll be taking a short break. When we come back, I will look at the concluding part of this conversation, which, of course, I've been engaging a former Minister for Energy. Briefly, he'll be telling about his views on this recent threat by the IPPs, which would have landed us in Dumso. That problem isn't solved. You have lights, but the albatross is still around because government owes over $1.7 billion. I'll be back after this break.
Ifa kura na menyisika. Edia ye mefui.
Ehifa pa na menya bosia. Edia tre medjuma yimu.
Kai kura mabre. Miye busia ato taxi fufu. Suhum Rural Bank.
Suhum Rural Bank.
Yema kwa baba Suhum Rural Bank. Ye won hyehyɛ ahodo bi te sɛ dwadifo abosia, ekokro bosia, susu account, ene da so wo ho savings account, me bada chain savings account, ene de keka ho. Suhum Rural Bank was 03422919896. Na won so wetumi aka sɛ
Suhum Rural Bank. Ama ene mayeka una.
Suhum Rural Bank. Enti me pa minie.
Suhum Rural Bank, growing our heritage.
Welcome to Auto Check Vehicle Diagnostic and Licensing Center.
I hear my car can be checked here without going to so many hour crash.
Sure.
Emission, check.
Alignment, check.
Brakes, check.
Visit Auto Checks at Koforidua Aquadum Road for the roadworthiness of your vehicle, from saloon cars to heavy-duty industrial vehicles. Madam, your car is now ready for the road.
Thank you so much. Auto checks. Check.
Auto Checks, your safety, our priority.
Auto checks.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural.
Welcome back. This is Ideas Exchange on TVXYZ. My guest is Emmanuel Ama Kofi-Boah. He's a deputy minority leader, former energy minister, MP for Elembele since 2009. And I'm told he won this time unopposed. And many people on the ground say he's done so much. And of course, they are very sure he's going to sweep more votes, especially in his capacity as a deputy minority leader. He's my guest. We are looking at parliament. We are looking at a hung parliament, a rejuvenated NDC, what Jeju Kwesin's return means to them, and government's threat and how they are going to manage it. The last few minutes of our conversation will switch to an area where he has a lot of expertise because of the work he did when he was energy minister. Mr. Boah, I've had a number of trips with you around the country in the heat of the power crisis, Dumso. We've been to almost every power enclave, and I've seen the processes that you put in place that were able to solve this problem. Now, when you sit back and you reflect on the pressure you had to bear, the solution you found, the policies you put in place to manage the debt that were almost an albatross on the neck of the independent power producers, and NPP took over. And where we are now, that the IPPs want to cut us off. How do you feel?
I think that anytime we talk about the power sector and the successes that I want to just stand up for the leadership that was provided by President John Mahama. I have really worked in my life in corporate world. I've had many leaders, many managers, but he is one leader that when you are in crisis, he makes you feel you are not alone. He understand the issues, and then he provides the direction and the leadership that is needed. That is the reason why we were able to basically max up almost over 1,000 megawatts within that short period of time. We had basically three problems. We had the issue of power deficit because our generation capacity basically was growing on an annual basis, and over the years we had not really been planning well to make sure that those capacities were met. We also had a problem with fuel because group importation for power was a problem. And then as a result of all of these challenges, we had accumulated so much debt in the energy sector. So the NDC, led by President Mahama, basically provided all these three solutions. And that is why you saw what we saw. We were leaving power when we had addressed those deficits in a very progressive way, making sure that we also had solved the fuel problem by bringing Ghana to the gas era. Countries had discovered oil for years.
And they were flaring the gas.
And thanks to the leadership beginning with President Mills, may he so rest in peace, and continued by President Mahama, we basically monetized Ghana's gas and did what no African country had done. Basically, a non-associated gas field. We managed to have a formula to produce it. Remember, you are doing a project that you are going to sell to a company that is already broke. Who is going to put his money there? But we had a formula. That's why we were able to attract the World Bank, IFC, and others, and did the Sankofa gas project. We brought increased oil production, and basically the upstream sector became the most attractive. The energy sector,
the number of FPSOs, for example.
all of the things we did. In fact, it is unimaginable that anybody will have the audacity today to talk about the energy sector in the mess we find ourselves. Go to the upstream sector and you ask the question, why has everybody run away? Why are we stuck with 3 producing fields? Why is it that our producing fields have gone beyond almost 50% and we have not made any effort? Even the low-hanging fruits. The Ake field that was supposed to have been produced. What did we do? This government messed it up. Basically handed that field over to Ake. They came to Ghana, basically took over the government, came to parliament, got all the sweetness you can think about, and then basically dumped them. Left. That's why the production is still sitting there almost 7 years. They have nothing to show for. More than that, we planned ahead and said, after we have solved all of this, one of the critical places is where the money for the energy sector, electricity, will be coming from, the downstream ECG. Remember the 500 million we brought from the United States,
that the MEDA project,
to basically help
project,
build the capacity of ECG and make sure that we can reform it. What happened to it? This same government went ahead because of an attempt to corrupt
the PDS issues.
Basically created one company overnight, have a joint partnership with a foreign company. This local company didn't bring 1 cedi. As a result, those commitments by the foreign companies, they refused. And it became basically a standard, what do you call it? What do you call the company? The scandalous company.
The PDS?
PDS. What happened? The Americans, out of frustration, decided to take the rest of their money away. It is the reason why all those reforms we wanted to do to ECG didn't happen. And so when this government came and we had put all these things in place and they had nothing to say, all they had to say was, the power plants were oversubscribed. There are too many PPAs. Up to today, they've not been able to basically prove anything. Remember, the Minister of Finance will come into Parliament on an annual basis and say that they were basically renegotiating. What have they done? But more importantly, the reason why we have gone back to this indebtedness is that after this government, led by President Mahama, had given a financial solution, they come in here and instead of following the plan that would have paid the indebtedness within 5 years. They basically give this thing to what they call they set up an offshore company to basically manage the payments.
Are you talking about the ESLA?
The ESLA, right. The ESLA PLC, the ESLA PLC, and today the ESLA PLC, in the recent numbers I was looking, has taken almost 8 billion, and what they've actually paid in terms of the freeing our debts is less than 3 billion. So basically, everything they've touched is a mess. More importantly, we are in what we are because this government has messed the economy up. We have losses, forest losses. The city's situation worsened because remember that the energy sector is basically forest matters. So this government, who after 7 years have nothing to show for, who has not even added anything to the generation capacity, who has basically not brought any financial solution, who has added more debt, who has not increased gas supply, who has not increased the upstream sector, must be ashamed to even be mentioning the NDC and John Mahama when it comes to the energy sector.
Well, my guest was Emmanuel Ama Kofi-Boah. I hijacked him in his office. I'm actually enjoying the cozy environment in this office as a deputy minority leader. The conversation has been very exciting, very educative, because there are several things we may have known but must have escaped us in the heat of the conversation around Jechikwe, Asen North, Hang Parliament, and public expectations. I believe that he has satisfied your appetite, especially when he says that the minorities' ammunitions will be with them and they will release them as and when government decides to exhibit that intention to weaken them and to have its way through Parliament. Mr. Kofi-Boah, thank you very much.
Good to have you. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed the conversation. My name is Ahianyo. We'll be back again next week for another edition.